Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4, and the verse 18 to 20. Chapters entitled Ambarish Maharaj offended by Durvasa Muni. So do we go by like recitation as well, or we don't do the recitation?
We do the recitation.
Okay.
And we do the purport as well.
Okay. Should I wait or?
Yes, please. You can start reading to me.
Okay. Savai mana Krishna padaravindayor.
Savai mana Krishna padaravindayor.
Vacham Sivaikuntha Gunanuvarnane.
Vacham Sivaikuntha Gunanuvarnane.
Karo Harir Mandira Marjanadiso.
Karo Harir Mandira Marjanadiso.
Shrutim Chakratyu Sat Shrutim Chak Archyutta Sat Kathodaye.
Shrutim Chakratyu Sat Kathodaye.
Savai mana Krishna padaravindayor.
Savai mana Krishna padaravindayor.
Vacham Sivaikuntha Gunanuvarnane.
Vacham Sivaikuntha Gunanuvarnane.
Karo Harir Mandir Marjanadiso.
Karo Harir Mandir Marjanadiso.
Shrutim Chak Achyuttam Sat Kathodaye.
Shrutim Chakratyu Sat Kathodaye.
Savai mana Krishna padaravindayor.
Savai mana Krishna padaravindayor.
Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane
Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane
Karo Harer Mandira Marjanadisho
Karo Hare Mandira Marjanadishu
Shrutim Chakarchyutta Satkathodaye
Shrutim Chakarachyuta Satsamodaye.
Anyone would like to repeat?
Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo
Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo
Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane
Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane
Karo Hare Mandira Marjanadishu
Karo Hare Mandira Marjanadishu
Shrutim Chakrachyuta Satkhadodaye
Shrutim Chakrachyuta Satsamodaye
Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo
Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo
Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane
Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane Karo Hare Mandira Marjanadishu
Shrutim Chakarachyuta Satkathodaye
Shrutim Chakrachyuta Satsamodaye
Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo
Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo
Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane
Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane
Hare Krishna. Go ahead.
Karo
Karo Hare Mandira Marjanadishu Shrutim Chakrachyuta Satkathodaye.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai
Maharaj Ambrish. Of course, this is from 18 to 20. We only recited one verse, 18. Maharaj Ambrish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. His words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to the Lord. And he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambarish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in the devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and to be completely free from all material desires. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 7.1, the Lord recommends Maya Sakta Manapartha Yogam Yunjab Madasraya. This indicates that one must execute devotional service under the guidance of a devotee or directly under the guidance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is not possible, however, to train oneself without guidance from the spiritual master. Therefore, according to the instructions of Srila Rupa Goswami, the first business of a devotee is to accept a bona fide spiritual master who can train him to engage his various senses in rendering transcendental service to the Lord. The Lord also says in the Bhagavad Gita 7.1, Asamsaya samagram mam utthajnanyasi tachrunu. In other words, if one wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead in completeness, one must follow the prescription given by Krishna by following in the footsteps of Maharaj Ambarish. It is said, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Bhakti means to engage the senses in the service of the master of the senses, Krishna, who is called Rishikesha or Achyuta. These words are used in these verses. Achyuta Sat Kathodaye Rishikesha Pada Bivandane. The word Achyuta and Rishikesha are also used in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is Krishna Katha spoken directly by Krishna. And Srimad Bhagavatam is also Krishna Katha because everything described in the Bhagavatam is in relation with Krishna. Om Jnanam Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. I was born in the darkest of ignorance. Do we go through the whole prayers or whatever? I guess fine. Okay. I was born in the darkest of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with torchlight of knowledge. I offer respectful obeisances unto them. Hare Krishna. So, a very important verse. Again, something which is very fascinating that Srila Prabhupada, if you look up on the Veda base, have quoted this verse at least 77,000 times. And that's like including all the transcripts, lectures, all of it. If you even search that once, you'll be able to see like 77 different places where within Prabhupada's archives you'll find him referencing this verse. Many different verses, including the one that is mentioned here, Maya Sakta Manapartha Yogam Yunjad Madasrayam. But also in the chapter 6, chapter 9, so many different Bhagavad Gita verses, and of course in Bhagavatam as well. And this verse comes also in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Madhya Leela, where there is a proper description of different aspects of devotional service. And as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching the Goswamis the lessons that they have to elaborate upon. So, as it is an important verse, of course, there is a lot of value and importance for us to kind of, those who are trying to practice devotional service in every day. But I'm also thinking what's the most relevant, because to some extent or the other, this is one of the dilemmas which many of us go through, that how can I control my mind, right? And it is common to the extent that I think many statistics show that the problem of the mind is going to be one of the biggest problem as compared to the other problems that modern day is facing. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I guess World Health Organization has some specific statistics saying that by 2030 or 50 or something, that they'll have more individuals with mental health problems as compared to just, cardiac problems or any other physical ailments. So it's definitely a concern, and I guess let alone the statistics for the world, but at least at an individual level, I personally fail to control the mind at many different situations. And in that situation, one of the various things that kind of comes as a question is that, do I really need to control my mind? It can go to that extent even, right? And this is the part which we need to understand from this verse. There is only one solution, and there is like a proper hierarchy of steps to follow to get to that solution. But let's talk about the solution first and then break those different hierarchies and kind of reach, how do we reach there? So the most important or the only solution to this is having the relationship with the Lord, a loving relationship, right? Otherwise the relationship doesn't just carry much of a value. As we would know from many different instances from various pastimes, having a grudging mood towards the Lord doesn't get us too far. So having the right amount of expectation that yes, the relationship with the Lord is what's going to satisfy, but also a loving relationship is the proper way to get started. Now, How do we get there? It is very clearly indicated here. Prabhupada mentions one must execute devotional service. That's for sure. Devotional service is not possible unless we have the loving relationship, right? I think a very simple understanding is bhakti means two, Krishna and you, right? There is a reciprocal relationship, and that is nothing but devotional. So it's a kind of a similar term as in devotion or bhakti. But there is a proper way, and that is guidance of a devotee, under the guidance of a devotee. So we cannot do devotional service whimsically. We have to perform devotional service in a way that it is coming through a proper source. And the proper source of that is through the bona fide spiritual master. Right? And we have Srila Prabhupada, we have Prabhupada's disciples who are continuing that legacy, who can guide us. It's like us, sometimes if needed, even like a small slap on the wrist, saying that this is not how it's done, this is the way to do it, or just kind of a proper guidance that this is the guiding path for you to move forward. This is how it has to be done. All of that can come from a loving representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, who himself is, as a leading example, taking guidance from his spiritual master. As we know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has his own spiritual master, not only one, multiple spiritual master, as he said. I'm sure everyone would know the name, Ishwara Puri, but also, like, whom did he take this sannyas initiation from? That's the mutt. Keshav Bharati, right? So again, the Lord took initiation in this Kali Yuga in that form, but also going back to when Lord Krishna was present, he also took initiation from, or like he was in the practice of devotional service in the Gurukul system through working with Sandipani Muni, right? And of course, we know about Lord Ram and many different incarnations that would. But the Lord doesn't have to do it. He's not limited to that, but He does that just to kind of teach us how we should be progressing. And also, there is an option given which might not be always feasible for us, but it's like directly under the guidance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So someone after reading this purport might say that, oh, I have the, ticket to be directly worshipping Krishna. I don't need to go to a spiritual master, right? But what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita, right? 4:34, if anyone can relate to that. Yes, maybe Prabhu is scrolling that up. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanina tattvadarshana. Right? So, what is tadvidhi? Vidhi is a word which is like, can you look the word-to-word translation? Vidhi. Try to understand. And then pranipat. Pranipat is by approaching a spiritual master. And pariprashnena, like you have to ask the question by submissive inquiries, not whimsical. Prabhupada mentions that in the purport. It should not be absurd. Inquiry should not be absurd. That how do I put on my sock, or how do I take off my shirt, or whatever, absurd inquiries. Those I'm pretty sure as a child you learn from your gurus, which is your parents at the first, right? So your spiritual master should not be bothered by such menial questions, but some submissive inquiries. And also, not only that, by rendering service. And that's when you'll guaranteed, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, that I am a fool, and you'll be able to understand that you might be or might not be in that category, but you'll get some small corrections, some big corrections, as I said, like a small slap on the hand. Oh, this is how it is to be done, not the other way, right? Something of that sort. And then they will initiate you into the knowledge, and that's how you can be self-realized, because they are self-realized, right? So that is the process. What, even though if we follow Krishna, Krishna is asking us to follow, going back to the same like service under the guidance of a devotee. Right? Okay. Now, this is where we can go a little bit more deeper into the understanding how the mind is to be controlled, because we established so far that we have to establish loving relationship with the Lord. It should be loving, it should not be whimsical, right? And then we see that loving relationship needs to be established under the proper guidance of a spiritual master. As of now, that's established, and then after that we have to understand how that needs to be done. And that is where comes this verse and its importance, right? The verse itself, it says, Savai Mana Krishna Padaravindayo. The first thing Ambarish Maharaj is doing is mana, right? He is trying to kind of control or fix his mind on Krishna. Now, there are two ways. Prabhupada, I read one of the 77,000 times when he's quoted this. I read at least one or two of those. And one place he mentions specifically that the reason mana is mentioned is because that is the first thing to work on. And of course we know that from Bhagavad Gita. I guess I don't remember the exact verse, but I remember the picture. I think it comes. The verse comes in the 3rd chapter. But the chariot driver. Do we have that picture here anywhere? No. Okay. The chariot driver, the charioteer, and the one who is riding the chariot, and then the horses, which are all the senses, right? Yeah. Maybe not that one, but the one that talks about the senses. Right. So the hierarchy is mentioned. The senses are lower. Then above the senses is the mind, and above the mind is the intelligence, and thank you, Maharaj. Right here, this one here,
This one.
the picture there, right? And this is one of the very common picture which I help people understand on the streets when distributing book as well. So if you look at the picture, the horses are representing all your senses. And I guess the flow or the phone's a little jammed, I guess. That's fine. But we can look at this picture. That's fine. That's okay. The phone has mind of its own, the one we are trying to control. So the senses are running wild. Each individual senses represents our, like all senses that we have, or each individual horses represents that. Then the rein of the horse is your mind. So to control the senses, you'll need your mind. And that is where it is mentioned here. The first thing that Ambarish Maharaj is kind of fixating is, he's fixating on not something that I want to not focus on. I would rather fixate my mind on what I want to focus on. So on the positives, right? Not the negatives. So the negatives are automatically taken care of when the positive is being emphasized. So the positive aspect of it is remembering Krishna. And Prabhupada says to the point that remembering Krishna, who is all good or all positive, and when you remember him, the way Ambarish Maharaj is doing, like as we see here, he always engages his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, right? And then when the mind is on Krishna, then also all the following services that are kind of also part of it are going to be involving that. So having the mind on Krishna is giving us a better control on all the 5 senses which are underneath. All the working senses, all the knowledge acquiring senses, all of them are being under control of the Lord if we try and control our mind and focus on Krishna. So the first and most important gateway to kind of get into the senses control is through the mind, and the mind has to be controlled by Machita, Madgata, Prana, Bodhayantas Parasparam, Kathayanchas Tamanitya, Tushyanticha, Ramanticha. Tushyanti, you'll feel satisfied even if you engage your mind in the service of the Lord, and you'll also have happiness in that. Right? So we have to definitely aim for that. And to do that, again, the processes are given here. As I was saying in Chaitanya Charitamrita, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining all these processes to the Goswamis, he actually says that there are n number of ways you could do service. And then, as we know, in the Nectar of Instruction, the first verse talks about the qualities of the Guru. And then after that, what should not be done, what should be done, that also comes into picture. The same way, there is a mention of different aspects of devotional service, and in that it is mentioned a specific verse that Ambarish Maharaj is going out of his way and he's capable of engaging all his senses in the service of the Lord. But even if you are able to engage, thank you, Prabhu, finally we have it. Even if you are able to engage one of those senses in the service of the Lord, then we are taken care of. And this is one of the verses or the point which gives a lot of solace to me, especially because many a times, I'm sure someone can help me quote this famous saying, jack of all trades, master of none. At least I can say that's one of the characteristics that I possess, that I could do all of little bit but not mastered in like at least one of them. In the same way, this verse is kind of quite helpful because we could use all of our senses, if not at least one senses, in the service of the Lord. Like over here we see Ambarish Maharaj is using his mind, he's using like his tongue, body, all of his like hearing, vision, all of it is going into the serving of the Lord. But even if we are able to engage one of them, like if I'm deciding today, let's just choose my legs, I'm going to put them in the service of the Lord. You could walk to the temple, which is not feasible, but maybe you can gas pedal to the temple, right? Or ride your bike to the temple. Or Maharaj does walking, so I cannot say that you not, but walking is definitely important. Yes. But walking, that's one of the ways Maharaj is, like, as you know, he's bringing this message. I was telling in our local congregation that many devotees have recently started hearing about the monks in US. They were doing like a peace walks. I'm like, Maharaj has been doing that for years before that. It's just that it was not as known in the social media in the past. Goes back to 1996 is the first time when Maharaj started walking. I was corrected on that last time when I talked to Maharaj, so that's great. I remember the time now. Yes, but that's when Maharaj started walking, and that's so appropriate, right? In a sense that you're engaging your senses of your, like you're engaging your legs, your karmendriya, the senses that kind of helps to move the body in the service of the Lord. But that is not only one thing you'll do. When you walk to the temple or when you walk as in pilgrimage, you're sure enough going to be ending up in the temple, and when you're in the temple you're going to be bowing down. So in one way or the other, the mind is somehow or the other like, slipped into thinking that I'm only engaging one sense, but ultimately you end up engaging all those senses. And that's the way to try and kind of bring that stubborn mind under control, right? So Prabhupada very nicely gives an example of controlling the mind. One has to be an expert at it. And many a times we fail in this thought process of being a little bit slow, and we give up on the thought process, right? Or maybe we might just be like, oh, not today, I don't want to control the mind. Which is where Prabhupada mentions very important point that controlling the mind is sure difficult, and we know that from Bhagavad Gita. The Krishna even acknowledges that, right? Arjuna, when he says that it's even harder than the wind to control the mind. But Krishna says it is possible by suitable practice and what are the two things? Detachment, right? Right. So what's the Sanskrit, if anyone remembers? Abhyas and Abhyas is one, and then Vairagya, right? Those are the two. So that's the chapter 6, if you would be able to Oh, never mind. Don't want.
Which verse?
Yeah, I'm not sure. 42, if that is what it is. Or maybe not 42, 30 something. But yeah, Vairagya and Abhyas, those are the two things that needs to be done. So the repetitive Abhyas is more of like, something that we have to do on a regular basis. And that is the only way to control the mind. Prabhupada gives a very nice example that if you have like, this is Asamsaya Mahavaho Manodurnikrishna Abhyasa Chakontiya. Thank you. Vairagya Chagriyati. So Abhyas and Vairagya, those are the two things definitely needed. So can we read the translation once? Lord Krishna said, O Maityam, son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult. Not difficult, but very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and detachment. And this suitable practice is what the spiritual master is teaching us, right? Prabhupada is teaching us, Lord Krishna is teaching us. And along with that, we have to work on detachment. And how to detach, as I said rightly here, Ambrish Maharaj is showing, he did not focus on the negative that, I need to detach on this, I need to detach on that. Rather, even though being like a king, he was able to skillfully engage all his senses in the service of the Lord, remembering his primary goal, keeping Krishna in the center. And Prabhupada said it's not an easy task to be a king. Of course, I'm sure most of us can relate to our daily activities, even running a family or your day-to-day school or whatever you're into. It requires a lot of mind away from Krishna, but that's where the cultivation of Krishna consciousness comes. This is the skill, a soft skill in a way, to hone into, and that is to try and keep ourselves reminding of Krishna even in the midst of the busiest schedule that we might have, right? Sometimes we'll be fortunate that we'll have so many services and they'll keep us engaged. Sometimes it'll be out of our own accord that we might do those services and we'll still be engaged. One way or the other, yena kena prakarena Krishna sevana anushilanam, right? So if we have one way or the other, we have to try and remember Krishna. And this is one of the ways to do it, which is the positive way. And this is where I would like to quote a very nice thing which Prabhupada mentions, that, if you have your mind, which is like a chauffeur or your driver, and you are riding a car. So the mind is your chauffeur and you are driving the car, or you are in the car, and you tell the mind, take me wherever. The mind's gonna go wherever it likes. But if you keep that mind from not going wherever and say, I give you proper direction, I want you to take me to temple, I want you to take me to, some holy place, then the mind is going to follow that. But if you leave everything on the mind, it is going to be a very dangerous ride. So we have to put that positive effort, and the positive effort is going to help us. Now, the very inspirational aspect of this positive aspect is what is mentioned in this verse as well in purport 2. There are two things, Achyuta and Rishikesha, right? So Achyuta Sat Kathodaye and Rishikesha Padabi Vandane. So if we are able to engage the senses in the master of senses, Rishikesha, then for sure, I think it's mentioned in this verse, Rishikesha Bhakti Uchyate, right? Yes. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchyate. So bhakti means engaging the senses in the service of the master of the senses. So if we are able to do that, the mind is going to be under control. And if it's under control with a positive thing, Krishna being all positive, then there is no scope of the negative. And that's where Prabhupada even goes to the extent of explaining that, I'm sure many of you have heard of the example of fire and the iron, right? If you put the iron rod in the fire, after a certain amount of time, if it boils enough or heats enough in the fire, the iron turns into nothing but like molten form. But at that point in time, that iron has all the properties of that fire, because if you touch that iron at that point in time, it's going to be as equivalent as fire. So if we are engaged in the service of the good, all good Krishna, then the mind is going to be always in the positive direction and thinking all good and serving the all good, and that way ultimately we'll be able to only have to worry about serving him and not think about the positive or negative, because the positive is going to come, given Krishna is the one who is all powerful. So this is where I would like to take a pause, and there is one more point which I want to mention, but maybe we can take a pause and see if there is any questions. How much time do we have until?
We have until 8:20, 8:30.
Okay, so yeah, this is a good time maybe to take a pause and see if there are any questions, any comments. Maharaj, if you'd like to add something or give some feedback, please.
Let someone else.
Okay, Maharaj. Yes.
I like the analogy of senses and the analogy of car and the driver.
Right.
If you say take us wherever you want, he will take us. And
Yeah, my spiritual master sometimes says that don't be a space cadet, right? You don't want to be like a spaced out cadet in a way. So you don't want to let your mind wander. If you let your mind wander, that's the same thing as like telling the driver, drive me anywhere. Because the mind's going to take you, there are so many things to go to, right? But that's where you have to put the positive reinforcement of bringing back, right? What's the verse? Yato yato nischalati? No, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like wherever and wherever the mind wanders, bring it back to Krishna. Bring it back to Krishna. I just remember the English translation to it. But the idea is if you let it go, then sure enough, it's going to go anywhere. So we do need to try, and that's Prabhupada's kind of kind mercy that he used that as an analogy to help us understand. So nice, Prabhu. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask about, so many times like we mentioned there's the mind and then there is us as a soul, right? And a lot of people outside, they don't have, they may not understand the difference between them, because honestly for them the mind is them, right? So, so if one were to differentiate, so is the soul guiding the brain, and how does that work, in terms of where to go and how to go, if you're talking about I in that way?
Right, yes. So I definitely use that picture. Again, a random person on the street would not know what you're referring to when it comes to that. So when you use that picture, or even this picture here, or the diorama, right? The changing body one, that helps people to understand that your mind and you are two different things. Like the picture again would show the senses, then the rain is your mind. And then, you can even start it from the other way for people to understand. So, looking at this picture, what's happening? And then when you help people understand, it's easier because you have the distinction of the driver being the soul, the one that is driven being the soul, then the intelligence, then the mind, and then the senses. Or this diorama which talks about the body keeps changing, but something constant remains. And that's where they can be relating to the consciousness, because the mind of a 2-year-old versus mind of a grown-up can also think differently, and that's where you can point out the difference, that mind is almost like an on and off switch. It kind of goes from something that you like right now, something that you don't like right now. So does that mean that you keep changing? No, you're still something remaining constant, and that continuum or the constant is the soul, right? Very simple example, when kids are in school, many a times they want to be not going to school, or they would like to when I'm going to be done. When they're grown up, they'll have a different thought process about going to school, or at least things were different back then, right? And that's where people relate to the memories in the past. So that's where you can also point out that what was something that you liked in the past, you don't like right now. So if that's the case, now has your identity as in like individual changed? And they'll be able to relate to that that's actually not the case. I still hold some values, I still have some morals, I still have some principles, and that is not just my mind. That is somewhere further. And that's where you can describe them a little bit about the ego as well, right? Yeah. Does that help?
So yes, just wanted to ask also, so the ego as well, is that part of the mind or just like so the soul's functioning?
No, that's the subtle body, right?
Subtle body.
So there is like gross body, and then there is like mind, intelligence, like false ego, right? Or ego, right? If you want to say it that way. So the mind is something which is going to be, intelligence. What are the three things? Intelligence, ego, and the mind. Those are three. So Prabhupada mentions like, in a way that the intelligence is the next door to the mind, in a way, to the soul. So, but the mind is something which is going to be turning into like a little bit more of a clarified mind when it comes to that. So there is some difference there too. The false ego turns from false ego to true ego when we identify ourselves as the servant of the Lord, as Amrish Maharaj is saying here, right? Does that help?
Yes.
When we go on the street and someone drops his money, the other person sees and he takes it himself. Mind says it's mine, not his.
Right. Yeah. The mind might not have the power to always make that distinction. And that's where you'll need the intelligence to kind of tell this is right, this is wrong. And that's where the ethics, values, principles would come, right? And that's what we get nourishment from the Shastra, because the Shastra is what's providing us what is the right way of doing things. And we have the codes to practice on, right? So, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Anything else? Anyone?
77,000 times. Is that what you said?
Is that?
That's a lot.
Yes.
That's the population of Peterborough.
Yeah, I was surprised to see so many different places the same verse has been quoted by Prabhupada. Like, it could be something as simple as talking to two Buddhist monks. There is one conversation with Buddhist monks, and that's where he's pointing out this verse. There is a conversation with some students at Cambridge University, and he's pointing out the same verse. And even in just a short morning arrival address, he's pointing out that verse. Many initiation lectures, he's pointing out this verse too. Yes, ma'am.
Next time you go to Peterborough, just
Yes.
think about
See,
it.
so that is how again we can use those numbers as Maharaj is putting them to like proper remembrance of Krishna. 77,000. When you go to Peterborough, you'll already know that many times it's been quoted, and you also know the population of Peterborough. Two things at once. Jai. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Assembled devotees ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Thanks a lot for doing this. 8,058.